The Chaneysville Incident by David Bradley. I discovered this through James Mustick's 1,000 Books to Read Before You Die, selecting it as part of my 26 book reading challenge for 2026. Heading into it, I felt reluctant. The cover art depicts a black man and a KKK member, which clearly signals heavy racial themes. Generally, I try to avoid books centered on racism, and my experience with this novel illustrates why. My initial impressions were split. On one hand, Bradley's writing talent and storytelling craft are undeniable. From a strictly literary standpoint, looking at the work from one writer to another, the prose is phenomenal. Bradley possesses immense talent that commands respect, and there were moments where I genuinely felt I was reading a 4 or a 5-star masterpiece. On the other hand, the narrative pacing is incredibly slow. The constant jumping back and forth in time made reading it a plodding chore. It took me months to drag myself through the first 77 pages. Realizing I had 350 pages left, I faced a choice. Spend an entire year trudging through this book or officially DNF it and move on. I chose to DNF. I looked up the plot summary to see where this slow burn was leading, and I am glad I stopped. Without giving away spoilers, the entire narrative boils down to one stunning plot reveal. That slavery was an awful period in history that forced people to make horrific decisions, which has left victims traumatized. While critics will argue the book is a more nuanced exploration of a protagonist researching history to confront his own demons, the actual destination of this slow burn plot is simply slavery bad. This highlights my fundamental issue with books centered on racism. They mistake the portrayal of a horrific era for profound literary insight. We know slavery was evil. No one disputes that. Reminding the reader of this awful period that we all agree is horrific is not inherently thought-provoking, nor is it a satisfying payoff for an exhausting, slow-moving novel. Worse still is the defensive culture surrounding works like this. When you point out that a book lacks a meaningful point beyond its historical tragedy, defenders rarely offer a structural or literary defense. Instead, they retreat behind an emotional shield, declaring that if you criticize the book, you are somehow minimizing the history and harboring racial bias. This is a manipulative double standard. Criticizing the quality of a story is completely different than dismissing the historical weight of its subject matter, and an author's technical skills and narrative choices are always open to criticism, no matter how sacred the subject matter is. There is a vast difference between respecting historical suffering versus enjoying how a fiction writer has packaged it into a story. Ultimately, the Chaneysville Incident is a frustrating contradiction. I'd give it 5 stars for Bradley's exceptional prose and sheer writing talent, but 2 stars for its sluggish pacing and lackluster payoff. Bradley has magnificent prose, but his execution of that prose leaves something to be desired, which is a deeper emotional payoff to the story. Balancing the brilliant craft against the exhausting execution, I settle on a final rating of 3 stars.